Hi everyone, I'm Mel and welcome to my next video. And in this video, Tiggy's turned up. It's funny, after my last video, lots of people were saying, can we meet Tiggy? There's Tiggy. Say hi Tiggy, he doesn't like being cuddled. So, okay, on to the content of the video. So what I want to talk about today is this topic, and it's a really big question. Is the narcissist the torturer, or is the narcissist the messenger? Now, I've been writing a lot of articles and the corresponding radio shows lately about victimhood and about really anchoring into our bodies and getting into body awareness in order to be able to heal with the thriver orientation. Now, the present 3 keys, I have regular webinars every 3 weeks, which is the 3 keys to thriving after narcissistic abuse. And the present webinar group, I put a question to them to help me out with this video so that we could present some information to other people outside of the group. And what this was about, it's about the understanding in the thriver orientation that the narcissist is a reflector. And what I mean by that is narcissists don't have their own inner identity that's been stunted, that's a part of them that they're not operating through. They're operating through the fabricated self, which is the false self. And narcissists can't generate a self and energy on their own. They are terminally codependent. They're working on energy outside of them. Now, what happens with narcissists is they can only attack us and hurt us with our own gaps, with our own wounds. And I talked about that in the 10 points of victimhood in my first video in this series. And number 1 was gratitude. And what that was about, if you remember that, is the recognition that what narcissists are doing is they're sensing and finding our gaps and our wounds, and they hit those with laser-like intensity. That's how they project their false self and their pain and their anguish onto us, and that's how they control people and cripple them and keep them rendered helpless and therefore ineffective, and they keep them hooked as narcissistic supply, is by finding their wounds and targeting those wounds with ferocity. Now, what we can say about that is we can say, well, you know, isn't that just horrible? That's the most disgusting thing for somebody to sense and find my wounds and target them. And, you know, I've even had victims say things to me like, you know, he knew that I was terrified of this. He knew that I had fears of security. He knew all of that. You know, I came to him like that. I came to him like this broken bird, and he knew that about me. And how horrible is it that he used that against me? And the thing is, we're actually handing the narcissist the bullets to shoot us with. But when we get into a thriver orientation, we use it as an incredible up-leveling opportunity, an incredible opportunity to be able to evolve ourselves and have our unconscious wounds become conscious so that we can heal them. Because what happens is when we heal them, not only do we break away from abuse and abusers, we also stop looking at the world from the outside in, saying I've got to monitor and look after everybody else, and I've got to work them out, and I've got to watch them, and I've got to, you know, check out their personality disorder or whether or not they're a healthy person. None of that is true. Because when we clean up our wounds that have made us susceptible to abusers, we are going to show up as an authentic self, which is an unwounded self, which means that we are not going to be susceptible and taken in, and we're also not going to be attracted. Because what happens to us is when we have unfinished childhood business, we have these wounds inside us that are unhealed, and they're young and they're underdeveloped and they're very vulnerable and they're very fearful. And this is where we hand power over, because this leaves a gap where someone as a false self can come into our life, very clearly sense what turns us on, what's going to be our yes button. So for example, if you have a terror of abandonment, I'm going to talk about that one. If somebody comes into your life who is really looking like, I would never leave you, I'm totally committed to you, you're my one and only, this is it for me, and we feel like this person is so connected, we think that that fear of abandonment is being healed through this person. But the absolute truth of the matter is, if we're carrying an energetic signature inside us of a fear of abandonment, no matter how this person is turning up, we're actually going to be confronted with that wound again. So they're actually not our savior. They actually represent that wound. And this is what we're doing. We're unconsciously regenerating and recreating our wounds over and over again until we get to the level of a narcissist, where it is a massive, huge billboard that puts us flat on our butts, and there's no ignoring it anymore. We're face to face with our deepest fears and wounds in massive technicolor, to the point where life can't go on as normal anymore. And that's when we have the choice. Are we going to disintegrate into a total victim where our life is trashed? Or are we going to integrate and finally heal our unconscious wounds? So the group that are working through the 3 keys in the private Facebook group that's connected to each webinar, they're doing incredibly well. There are people breaking through there every single day and sometimes hour by hour. And people that are really hitting Thriver status already after even only a few days by working this deep truths of the inside out orientation. And I put it to the group, those that have made the correlation between their biggest, deepest wounds and what the narcissist delivered to them. Now, a lot of answers came in, and what I did is I picked the really common ones that I just see over and over and over again, and I know that a lot of you will profoundly relate to. And these are childhood wounds, these are unhealed wounds. So one that a few people said was the feeling that I had no significance. And absolutely what happens with that wound is that was a childhood wound where we didn't feel significant and we didn't feel important and we didn't have a say. And then what happens is a narcissist, a false self, will come into our life granting us extreme significance. So we feel, oh my gosh, for the first time in my life, I feel understood, I feel valued. And this person values me so much. And then of course what happens is after the initial idealization, and then we're hooked, and the narcissist is getting narcissistic supply, whatever that means to that narcissist. Then what happens is the intense devaluation, where that wound will come back at you in ferocity, where you feel totally invalid. You feel that you don't have a say, that you are not significant, that everything else is more significant to the narcissist than you. So another really common one is never feeling good enough. It doesn't matter what you do or what you don't do, it is never good enough. I would pretty much say that this one plays out with every narcissist, and it is an unhealed childhood wound, especially if we were brought up with conditional love, where we really, our lovability, how lovable we were and how worthy we were was based on performance. And we had parents that might have been high achievers, or they were very critical and very judgmental, and they were very critical and judgmental of themselves. And that's how they were brought up. So and they were always criticizing us into trying to get better performance. So if we feel like we were never good enough, what happens is when the narcissist came into our life, he or she would have been like, oh, that's fine. Doesn't matter if you didn't do the dishes properly. Oh, I just love you anyway. You could never screw up with me. You're perfect just as you are. So, because that's what we wanted to hear, and that's what hooked us in. And then what happens is, absolutely, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I wrote a whole article about that on my blog, and you're never good enough. A huge one, especially for a lot of women, this was very big for me too, is fear of security and ability to survive financially. And I've just found this so incredibly interesting, is that I've met women that are self-created millionaires, that have numerous businesses that are highly, highly successful, etc. But what has happened is they've taken on through their DNA, and also to probably their mothers, and often it is their mothers, these beliefs that I need a man to survive, that I can't survive without a man. So even if they overcompensated with being successful, And I was like that. I was able to always generate an income, and I was good with money, and I was great with supporting myself. But I'd always had a mother that my father looked after everything. That was the paradigm back then. You know, she wasn't a financial controller at all, and it wasn't about her having the purse strings or the money. So, you know, I didn't think I could, at a deep unconscious level. So it really has, and of course it can be literal. You know, maybe you grew up in families where women weren't able to create their own incomes, or they weren't allowed to, or they didn't have any desire to. They just wanted to bring up families. So what happens when we have a fear of security and ability to survive financially, what actually usually happens is we gravitate towards what seems to be successful partners, people that are going to look after us incredibly well financially, and that fear will be eased and taken care of. And then what happens is extreme financial abuse. And I know so many of you out there will be relating to this. That's when you have those high-powered or seemingly, you know, powerful, successful narcissists that, you know, strip you and your children of all of your money and your rights, and won't help you, and actually try to throttle you financially. And I promise you, I know all about that. That can be a really, really big one. So the next one is reliving relationships of conditional love based on reward and punishment. And that's very, very similar to feeling like you're never good enough. But we also too can have that conditional love, can be that we really think that, and we really get pushed into being and doing, handing over values and handing over what we believe about life and ourselves in order to try to get to not be punished and to get the reward. And the reward is really of being loved and accepted, and that stuff we play out from childhood. Okay, so unworthy of love is a really big one. And if we came from childhoods where we didn't feel emotionally loved for who we were, then we may hang on. We may hang on relentlessly to someone who initially came into our life love bombing, professing to be the love of our life, and that unconditional love that we just crave so much because we hadn't healed those traumas from childhood yet. So we were hungry, very, very hungry. And then we had this perfect person loving us and adoring us like no other ever has, and then absolutely abuses and devalues and does all the awful things that narcissists do. And we may hang on ferociously, believing that nobody's ever going to love us like this again, realizing that it was actually us that had to learn how to love us. My feelings do not matter. Now, as children, we could have been brought up with our feelings were very, very invalid. So it's things like don't cry, don't be angry, don't be upset. I don't have time to listen to you. You know, I don't want to hear you cry. You know, all the normal stuff. Children are seen and not heard, especially when the emotions are uncomfortable or distasteful. So what happened with that is a narcissist came into our life totally, totally appealing to your feelings are so important to me. I really hope some pennies are dropping here, okay? And then, of course, what happens is further down the track, your feelings become totally unimportant. And then you get to meet the absolute callousness and the emotional rejection and the abandonment and not being soothed and not being held. And your emotions are totally met with a lack of affection and a lack of validation, which mirrors exactly the wounds that you took on from childhood. So what's the solution to all of this? The solution to all of this is the same as always, that we need to self-partner, we need to get into our bodies. And I really, really would love you to go to my blog and read. I have an intensive article I've just done all about that, about getting into your body, and it's called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, the Body Connection. And it's a really vital understanding of what happens when we're not self-partnered and what happens when we're not healing and targeting our subconscious and up-leveling these old wounds, and how when we're not self-partnered doing that, loving and accepting ourselves enough to want to heal ourselves and doing the work on that, that we're totally disconnected. And then what happens, and we're trying to exist in life as our normal with our wounds. And rather than get the saviors of our wounds coming into our life, we get the deliverers of our wounds. So getting back to that original question, is the narcissist the torturer or the messenger? Okay, the truth is the narcissist is both. But this is not new torture. And what is really important about this is that the torturing is to wake us up. The torturing is to say, the reason why this has happened is because we are getting the message as a whopping great billboard of the wounds that we'd never originally healed, that we'd taken on from a very young age, that have been unconsciously driving our life ever since, and bringing in more of these wounds in greater and greater and greater intensity to get our attention so that we can heal them. I want you to deeply understand that it is absolute rubbish that narcissistic abuse is just a random event, that it's just bad luck, that it's just could happen to anybody. That's not the truth. It happens for a reason. And the incredible, beautiful thing about the Thriver orientation is when we take the message, when we take the reason, when we see the higher purpose to all of this, which is about our flourishing and our nourishing and our freedom to be our highest and our best selves, having the best life experience that we could ever imagine, is that for those of us that have done that and are on the path to that, yes, it's a profound journey. And yes, it takes a lot of courage and it takes work, but there is a way through to a more expanded, joyous, incredible life that you could ever imagine even before you were abused. This is our liberation, and this is as it is meant to be. That's why this happened. So if you've had enough of the pain, I really would love you to check out my blog, which is blog.melanietoniaevans.com. And you can see a lot of my, and please look up that article, Narcissistic Abuse, the Body Connection. I really want you to read that. It's going to really help you understand. And also too, if you'd like to come into one of my next webinar groups, all you need to do is go to melanietoniaevans.com/free webinar. So that's melanietoniaevans.com/free webinar. And I'd love you to come in there and experience firsthand the Thriver Healing Orientation and how to find and up-level these wounds that have allowed you unconsciously to be susceptible to narcissists, so that you never will be again. Okay, so that's it from me till the next video. So lots of love. Bye-bye.